Let me just say, I love isekai stories and the trope itself. But, I mean, compared to other tropes, it's pretty unanimous that isekai is just not everyone's cup of tea. It's seen as really boring. Like, it's seen as creepy because of the age gaps. I mean, it's just a lot. It's seen as a ruined genre, a genre which used to be fine and is now just crumbling to the ground. It's seen as bad if unimportant. I mean, if it's not important to the plot, why are you making it into an isekai? It's seen as unoriginal because it's been done before, it's been overdone, and it's seen as the entire manhwa market. So I was curious, I wanted to see why it was seen so badly, even though there are such good shows and stories that have come out that are in the isekai genre, that utilize the isekai genre well. And so I went online and I found out loads of things. I found out what it is, like I wanted to go through that, the definitions and all of that stuff, where it is and who is writing it, who is creating isekais, the disadvantages, which I already mentioned but we'll go much deeper into, and the advantages of the trope, just to explain what this trope is and what is going wrong. Like, why is it not original when it used to be? And if you have any time, check out my portfolio link or my some descriptions and all of that stuff, that nonsense in the description. So first of all, what is the isekai trope? What is the isekai trope? I mean, pretty easy lemon squeezy. I even know what isekai means. It means another world, basically. But I don't want to just rely on my own knowledge. I wanted to go to online. Like I said, I wanted to check things out, research a little bit. And so I found a very nice definition of the trope, or more specifically, I guess it's a genre, but it's also a trope in a way. It could be treated as a trope. Wiki says that the genre can be divided into two types: transition into another world, so isekai tenni, and reincarnation into another world, so isekai tensei. So yes, the isekai trope can be split into two, and that's either being transported or reincarnated. Very simple, very nice, very sweet. But I didn't want to stop there. Of course I didn't want to stop there. I've got to at least do one more definition. I've got to look something else just to expand on knowledge of what isekai is. And so I found Curtis Liu's paper in 2020, which was one amongst many, talking about the darker sides of isekai. And this suggested that the escapism promoted in the isekai genre, the idea of you going into your favorite novel and escaping real world, can promote and can influence some vulnerable consumers, especially in Japan, Japanese consumers, to maybe get dangerously lost in fantasies. Should I say dangerously lost is the word that they used. So my definition kind of brings that together and puts it as a part of the genre, that it is a risk, but not entirely that it defines it in exactly, just taking that into account. So my definition is that the isekai trope is when a character is transported or reincarnated into another world, typically in a fantasy setting. Indulging too much into stories with this trope could have a negative effect in some people in some situations. Some is the key word here. There are some good ones though, like Slime coming out. I mean, I'm not an advertiser, but you know, Slime's coming out. Was it season 4, season 3? It's exciting. Anyways, yeah. And then for a webcomic example, again, half of the market, but I mean, let's go Trash of the Count's Family. That's a really good one as well. That is like Slime, it's like an outlier, which is quite interesting, quite chilled without it being too over the top, like a lot of the other webcomic ones can be. And then a cartoon example, you will know this cartoon, but I don't think they think and realize that it's actually an isekai, and it's Samurai Jack. I mean, he was sent into a future, so technically different, and a completely different setting. So he has been transported into this world and into this place by Aku, the guy who was in my nightmares, the creature who was in my nightmares, that routine. Literally, should I perform it? Should I do it for you today? Wait. Long ago in a distant land, I, Aku, the shape-shifting master of darkness, unleashed an unspeakable evil, but a foolish samurai warrior wielding a magic sword stepped forth to oppose me. Ching! 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 Before the final blow was struck, I tore open a portal in time and flung him in the future, where my evil is law. Now the fool seeks to return to the past and undo the future. That is, I can't, oh my god, I haven't watched this video. Da da da. Back to the past, say some rain. Watch out. Anyways. Yeah, just disclaimer. Literally literally, my mind is like wiped. The isekai trope is not the system power fantasy trope. It's different. Like, it is about the reincarnation and it is about the transportation. It's not the idea that they are transported specifically into a system. They can be transported anywhere into any kind of idea. It's not just necessarily a tower fantasy, and it's certainly not those urban fantasies that just happen with the characters inside of it. So where is the isekai trope seen the most? You know, where do you think, oh, okay, it's gonna come, it's here, I know it's gonna come, you expect it to be seen? Well, usually on a second monitor, because it's usually so boring, bland, or lewd that you don't want your parents, friends, family, your pet lizard to see that you are watching it, regardless of how good or quality it is. Another place where you'll see the isekai trope is literally the history of anime. I mean, there is so many different animes with isekai. It's almost like half and half. Sometimes it feels like there's half, like recently it's literally just some martial arts ones with ninjas and traditional Japanese themes, and then there's going to be an isekai of some kind, whether it be an otome kind of style or whether it be for a power fantasy kind of thing, and then there will be just like slice of life romance that's not even that. It's just fine. I feel like that's pretty much the anime market right now. Shonen, isekai, slight amount of romance or slice of life kind of stuff going on. That's literally, and comedy, and then obviously the classic ecchis and harems. But yeah, isekai is a massive portion of it. Novels and comics, specifically novels as well, because there are loads of light novels and loads of like coming from Korea, and loads of things that are coming out that have that kind of trope. And then lastly, you'll see it in otome comics, games, novels, because the otome games are very popular as well, and just the idea of otome game, like, you know, those episode or those chat games and stuff. And with isekais, we're talking about a lot of otome games. A lot of otome games might have an isekai element to them, not necessarily. And who is writing it? Well, the people making these stories and using isekai as a trope, some of them will be people who are very concerned with topics like morality, topics like survival and mortality. They want to talk about those elements in their story by making the character be transported or reincarnated into another world. And I actually love these people, because these are the people making the good shit. These are the people writing the good stories where they actually really do touch upon why they chose this, because it's not you don't add plot devices for no reason, right? Or you shouldn't. These people don't. But sometimes there are also people who are just fantasy fans and they want an excuse to write a fantasy, and this is what people do. So they just use that isekai as a genre to have an excuse to write a fantasy that people will accept, people will understand. And last but not least, there are just some uninspired people who jumped on the bandwagon because it exists, and it is just it is taking over manhwa, manga, anime. Like, it is taking over. And obviously, I mean, like I said, I do enjoy isekai stories, I do, but I mean, you have to use it right. You have to show the story correctly. You can't just do it for no reason. You have to have a good reason to do it, and also the reason that you do it and the way you do it needs to be good, and it needs to be deep, it needs to be interesting, it needs to be unique. And like, I mean, I get why people don't like it. So far, I'm kind of understanding. But I do want to go into detail. I do want to further get into the grits of what is the problem. And that's why I came up with these disadvantages. So yeah. What are the disadvantages of having this in your comic? Well, the first disadvantage is that it gives us the cruel hope that we'll be able to one day escape this plane of existence and go and fight dragons instead. A second disadvantage is that it's creepy. It's just creepy. Like, I mean, let's just be honest, it's creepy, you know? And my example for this, my lovely example, is Mushoku Tensei. Yes, get mad. Get loud. Get loud. You've gotten it out now? You've gotten it out? You've gotten it out. Cool. If you haven't gotten it out, feel free to let me know in the comments. I will maybe read your no. Anyways, Mushoku Tensei. Yeah. It's creepy. It is. I mean, I know, we all know that. If you've seen it, you know it's creepy. It's very popular, and I couldn't like it because it's creepy. I understand that he is a flawed character though, and that is a lot of the reason why people watch it, and I respect that to a degree. I do not like it, and I cannot enjoy it because he is so incredibly awful. Yeah, it's disgusting, to be honest. But yeah, so I don't know why it's so popular, but that is a disadvantage of the trope. I mean, it's very clear, because literally, like, the art and animation, the lovely art and animation cannot cannot cover up his crimes. He said he needs to go to Arkham. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not gonna hold you now. He needs to go Phantom Zone. He needs to get out of here. I'm not gonna lie to you. Another disadvantage is that it's dangerous. It's dangerous because it can lead to dangerously deluded people, like the K-pop stars I was talking to on the train from uni one time, and I was talking to them about how I'm like a BTS fan or whatever, and they were saying like, you're not a multi, which is just like you like multiple bands. And it's like, obviously I enjoyed the music from other people and different bands, but there's only one that I was really actually interested in watching any videos of or anything like that. And so I was like, no, because I mean, I have other things to do. I've got anime to watch, but I ain't got so much time and only so much care about other people. And they called me weird because they were dangerously deluded. Another disadvantage of the isekai trope is that it is unoriginal. 10 years ago, maybe it was. 10 years ago, I think it pretty much was, especially in the anime space. But now the summaries are so goddamn similar. The casts are so similar. The art style is so similar often. It's kind of sad, I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, everyone is either Sung Jinwoo or they're Kirito or they're Neva. And it's just getting a bit... I'm getting a bit mad about it. Come on now. Like, I mean... Obviously, stories are stories and they can be interesting, but it's like, have a lick of a creative bone in your body, literally like a tiny little piece of a creative bone in your body. I'm begging you. Like if we're gonna do isekai, can we get some, I don't know, orange haired protagonists, purple haired protagonists, and can we get some people that are not as pale as this tissue? Please, please. Could we get someone of this skin tone, darker, different, could we get different protagonists? Thank you. Like, oh my god, you'd make yourself infinitely more original just by doing that. I'm telling you this now. Like, you literally, like, it's not even that hard. And the last disadvantage that I could think of that I thought was really important to have in the spotlight is that it is overdone, which is different from unoriginal, different from creepy, different from everything else. It's overdone. Overcooked. It's not medium rare, it's not well done, it's over, love, it's burnt. This is more about how it's literally everywhere and it's taking over the entire market. Like, it's not about the trope being bad, it's about the trope being everywhere. yeah, I can't avoid it often, and that makes me a bit salty because I love the genre, I love the trope, but it's basically like, okay, think about how YouTube search engine right now is kind of like, it really sucks, right? So I'm searching up, right, I'm trying to find fantasy and historical fiction. And tell me why I keep seeing people also watched. Did I ask what people also watched? Did I ask what people also watched? I want to see fantasy. I want to see historical fiction. Yeah? I don't need to see the isekai versions. Okay? I don't need that to be the second result. I don't. I can't escape. I can't have other choices. Because what will happen is I'll go on the search. I'll find something and I'm like, oh, it's alright. Scroll to the next one. Oh, it's alright. It's an isekai. It's just, and it's like, I did not ask for that. Do you know what I mean? Like, do you know the difference? Do you know the actual difference between just a normal fantasy, normal historical fiction, and isekai? At this point, I don't think people do. Like, I think the young, impressionable teenagers and children who are reading these comics don't actually know the difference. And that's a problem. That is a problem. You're breaking down everything around you. That's what this trope does. It invades genres and makes it seem like that's all they are. And it's like, there are a million other fantasy types and stories and historical fictions that you could do, and yet one thing sells and everyone's just like, oh, this is what this is now, this is what the market is now. But, I mean, there are some advantages to this trope. There are a few advantages that make the isekai trope work and make sense and actually help the plot and be good for the market. And I do want to go over these too, because I feel like it is so hated and it's so easy to say isekai genre sucks, but there's a reason why it's successful and there's a reason why I like it. And so the first advantage is that it gives us the hope that one day we'll be able to escape this plane of existence and fight dragons. Another advantage is that it allows for a mixing of genres and a mixing of tropes and a mixing of storytelling devices and things like that, because it in itself is also a plot device. I also consider it a plot device to a story, and so it starts us off with already a mix and match of different types of storytelling. So a good example is Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint. The Goats, it's a great manhwa. It is one of the best on the market for a good reason, because it is great and I'm almost caught up. I'm always like a bit behind and then I I catch up and then I wait, and so I'm always like lagging behind, but I am pretty caught up, and it is so good. Almost 200 chapters in, like, it is still so good. And part of that, I argue, is because it has a mixture of ideas in it that it touches upon well, that is enabled by the fact that it's kind of an isekai, because the main characters are taken from one world into their world, but it changes. It's like a shift that happens because it is a novel, but and so he is technically isekai'd into it, but the setting stays the same most of the time. It's quite a confusing thing, but it does count as an isekai. And some of the mixtures are obviously typical urban fantasy elements, but we also have the found family dynamics. We have parasocial relationships being explored within the story, which is really cool because most of the time it's explored by the readers outside of the story, but in this he literally has a parasocial relationship with one of the characters until it becomes a mutual relationship, a normal relationship, where our main character has his own, the protagonist in the story, who he admires and everything, and it's just super cool of a concept to talk about. And it also isn't unrealistic. Like, it allows us to see what a person would do if they were transported into a novel, and what novels are like to people, because like you don't read novels and just, you know, for no reason. Like, you don't finish a novel for no reason. They show that his life was revolved around it, yada yada yada, and it's like important to him, and it actually shows what a committed reader would be like, because a lot of the other times, which is why it's even in the title, you know, omniscient reader's viewpoint, because a lot of isekais, they're just kind of suddenly transported into something they don't even care about. It's not even like something they really like, or if they do like it, like it's a bad show or it's a bad shitty thing. But this is like a really solid story that he read, something that he was reading while he was in work, which is great because, oh my god, no more teenagers, thank god, no teenagers as a main character. I love that because I watch too much anime and I get sick of it. And then, you know, there's just loads of other good things about having that character and have it be set in a realistic environment that is just reality shifted in a way. You know, there's no need to do excessive research because the isekai genre allows you to take shortcuts, like setting it in a world very similar to your own, or having it in a standard fantasy setting where you can then talk about different topics within that setting, because you've already got two mismatches of genre. Why not add different tropes and different genres as well alongside with it? And most people do it because it enables them. Yes, that's the first advantage. Very long. The second advantage is that it is easy access. You know, it's easy for people to read, and I mean, let's face it, some stories are more digestible because they are isekais. Would you prefer to read a power fantasy with nothing else going on in his life except from the fact that he wants to make himself powerful and just have him have only knowledge of his own life in his thing? Or would you prefer, I don't know, having it with all of that, but also the idea that he is another person from another universe? I mean, I think that as a whole, understand it does make an otherwise boring, like harder to care about, harder to consume kind of story more interesting just by the fact that it's an isekai, as long as it's done well enough. Because obviously you can kind of just wipe all the interesting parts away from it and just make it the same thing, just like another power fantasy, and pretend that the isekai didn't happen or it doesn't affect anything, which is really dumb. Otherwise, if you do it well, then it makes it more easily accessible. I will say though, I would be happy at this point to read about a villainess who tries to do a redemption arc without it being an isekai, because like I feel like that is actually pretty interesting on itself. Like, you know, redemption arcs are loved concepts. I've made a video on it and people really like those, so you know, you could still do that, but it does also make it a bit more interesting again if it is an isekai, because that kind of villainous stuff, I don't think it was popular or even known very well until the isekai kind of started to be used in these stories. So yeah, it does. Even if I would prefer now to read villainous stories, it's only because it was easily accessible. The concept of them were easily accessible through the isekai, and then now I'm liking the concept. So you're seeing what I'm saying, I'm hoping. And the last advantage of the isekai trope is that it was and still can be original. It can be original very easily as long as you have the right writers doing it. Sword Art Online is thought to be the most unforgettable and definitive isekai of the 2010s, and it was mainstream. It was absolutely well known everywhere with every person who watched any anime. It was something that blew up the whole idea of an isekai to a bunch of new viewers, a bunch of new fans, and this generation of people my age, I suppose, and even people older than me, actually probably even people older than me, because I was only like not a decade old when Sword Art Online came out. And so Yeah, it really shaped the anime industry to what it is now, and probably is a massive reason why so much isekai anime still comes out now. And that was because they looked at games and they looked at what worked with games, and they used that in their story and created a anime, manga, whatever that people enjoyed, that related everything that they liked about games with what they like about fantasies and what they like about, like, it really was a lovely love child that was only made possible by focusing on games. And so that might be a key to what makes a good isekai useful, especially an isekai with some kind of system or based on JRPGs, etc, etc. We can do the same. We can make isekais interesting. Writers especially, you know, can make isekai stories interesting in the present day if we just think about games and we think about what games are good in 2024. Okay, maybe not 2024. Why don't we think about what games were good in the end of 2023? Okay, this might take a while. I'm gonna get back to you. This might take a while. Finally, why does it still exist? Why do isekais still exist? On one hand, they are creepy, dangerous, sometimes unoriginal, sometimes overdone. While on the other hand, they facilitate creativity, they are easily accessible, and they are sometimes original too. We have good parts, we have bad parts. We know the what, we know the when, the where, and the who. So why even take the chance? Why do people create it? Why do writers still use the isekai trope? Well, it's trendy, and it's been trendy for a long time, which means that as long as you write something within the plane of that story, there will always be an audience for it. Which means that the problem isn't the trope or the trope being overused. The problem is the creators are not being creative enough when they are using this trope, when they are writing this trope. As long as people keep creating nuanced takes on the isekai tropes, like the wrong way to use healing magic, for instance, this trope can still be entertaining. Yeah, in sum, creators need to be creative. And that's why the isekai genre, while it is kind of like often used badly and is not the most loved trope in the world, certainly one of the least liked tropes, it is actually not the trope's problem, it's the writer's problem. The trope isn't bad, the trope isn't bad, the trope isn't bad. If you want to do one thing, then subscribe. Check out my other videos in the No Bad Tropes playlist. And then I say a quick goodbye. Jannyeong. Okay, bye.